Today we have a special guest on the Go AI podcast. I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Karen Freberg. She is a professor in strategic communications at the University of Louisville and a nationally respected voice in social media, digital strategy, and she's worked with organizations including GE, Churchill Downs, Adobe, Chipotle, just to name a few. She's an award-winning author of several books, including The Roadmap in Teaching Social Media and Digital Media, writing for strategic communication. So Karen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Really excited to be here, Jenna. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Karen, tell the audience a little bit. I know I gave you a little introduction, but what are you building now? And I didn't necessarily talk about the bird's nest, but what is the bird's nest? And can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Jenna. So I kind of consider myself, I would try to be like a professor that wears many hats. I get bored very easily. And so teaching social media and strategic communications is the perfect area because constantly there's ongoing change. So my day job is basically a professor in strategic communications, but I'm very much like trying to bridge the gap between industry and academia just to kind of emphasize experiential learning and provide students with as many job opportunities as possible. And so that really, like with my work in my classes and my books, that really kind of was the brainchild of what we are, what you mentioned earlier with the Bird's Nest. So the Bird's Nest is a 501c3 nonprofit, and it is really focusing on empowering rising professionals to get as much hands-on experiences working with clients, helping out with the community, and ultimately fostering the future talent, because industry professionals that I've talked to over the years have been like, we are looking for the next round of talent. Who knows AI? Who can do all of these different skill sets? And, it's about really giving the students options, but also here in Louisville and beyond, empowering the, industry to look at and see, oh, wow, these are individuals who have, great experience working with some incredible partners. And the Bird's Nest has been very fortunate to work with some of the partners that you mentioned, and a few others here in Louisville and beyond. And it's just been one of the most rewarding experiences. So I pretty much I'm a coffee addict. But one of my goals, if anyone is listening to who is connected with a coffee brand, I am all ears because I feel like I need to get a sponsorship at this point with the amount of coffee that I drink and consume.
I know. I feel like I know you as like Starbucks too. Like I'm like, I know you love Starbucks. So hello.
I have an equal opportunities when it comes. I mean, I love all supporting the local coffee economy. I mean, literally most of my meetings, like whether it's with students or professionals, are literally in coffee shops because they're like, "Well, Karen, let us buy you coffee." I'm like, "Oh, sign me up." And or with students, they're like, "Hey, can we go to meet coffee to talk about this project or this opportunity?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So yes, so love coffee.
And so, speaking of bridging academia and industry, you are a professor of strategic communications,
Hmm.
and pretty much every industry needs that in
Yeah.
spades. So, what AI brings to the table is that it can really speed up communications.
Yes.
But what comes with that is there any cost to the speed? And if so, how can you preserve the integrity of the communication while still benefiting from the speed that AI brings?
Absolutely. That's a great question because I mean that's one of the things that I've had not only conversations with students about, in my classes because we do cover a lot in AI, but also industry professionals. And I actually was able to lead a webinar a few weeks ago with Reagan Communications, just writing on AI, and the whole emphasis is of like, well, how do you basically keep your human voice while still utilizing these tools? I mean, I think, we have to know these tools. I mean, but of course, we don't want to necessarily over and heavily rely on them. And I have a friend, her name is also Karen. Her name is Dr. Karen Sutherland. She's down at the University of the Sunshine Coast in Australia, and she actually came out here in the fall for Louisville for her sabbatical, and she gave a lot of talks on this. And her big emphasis is use AI to minimize, this time that you spend on some of these medial tasks that basically we're able to kind of, go through. Like I look at PR and that's my background, media lists. I'm like, I remember doing that all by hand back in the day, and that was horrible. Now it's like create AI, media lists. But she said that you want to use these tools that enhance your, ability to spend on it on more senior level and strategic and managerial concepts, and really do the creative side of things versus like over relying it on everything. And she made a point of saying you don't want to lose your human sparkle, because if you're relying so much on the speed and the efficiency, you get used to that and you lose that ability to create, and think critically. And so I really have taken that to heart with my students, and I quote her all the time with that. I'm like, I love, that emphasis. But yeah, it's a balance. I would say it's definitely a balance to balance AI with everything else.
I love that. You don't want to lose your sparkle. I like felt like the soul, right? Your soul sparkle. For a lot of students, we mentioned academia. It wasn't only a few years ago where a lot of universities were saying, "Hey, no, don't use AI," and then all of a sudden, it was, "Hey, yes, use these tools." To your point. So, have you been a part of that? Have you seen that? And what are some of the challenges that have come along with that for students?
Absolutely. I think we're still in the early stages. I mean, you do see a lot of universities fully embrace AI. I mean, I think Ohio State was one of the first that really said, yeah, we have an AI class that every single student is going to take. And I think having an AI literacy course is essential. And we saw a lot of that with digital media literacy in general. I think having a basic fundamental skill set like that is crucial. But you also have ranges of programs saying we are not using AI, period. And with students, they come in saying, well, I'm applying for these jobs where they kind of expect not only it, but know how to use it and have evidence of your workflows and just what you've been able to build with different agents and all of these different requirements. And so if we're not preparing the students accordingly, they're, falling behind and compared to other people who are. So what I've seen is really still not like the wild, wild west, to be perfectly honest, but more of like a range and continuum. So talking with other colleagues, there's some that are like, I'm 1,000% in on AI. I know everything. I embrace it. It basically runs my life. I'm like, cool, awesome. And I tell my friends who are in that category, I'm like, well, tell me when, AI can do my laundry and I'll be fully on board. But then there's others that are like absolutely petrified, that they refuse to use it at all. They're very much, afraid of the consequences and stuff. So you basically have that kind of contingent. But for me, I kind of use it basically, in between, where I want the students to use it, but I tell them how I want to use it and how to document, how to showcase their workflow process. So case in point, I actually have a personal branding assignment for my social media class. It's one of their very first assignments that they do. They have to analyze their online presence, but I actually have them go into the various different chats, whether it's chat, Claude, Gemini, and basically have them run an audit on their personal brand based on what everything that is out there, and kind of see, well, is this different from your own analysis, and how so, and what's come up, what are the things that you need to work on. So it gives the students like a task that I'm asking them to use AI and then report back. But the key thing is that reflection, like what are they learning, what did they think about this process, because I think that's the key thing. But you can use AI for so many different ways. And teaching, it helps me create rubrics, which as a professor, I hate creating rubrics, so that has been a game changer. But, I personally have a policy that's written in my syllabus, but there's a personal policy that I use for my own work. I'm like, I'm using it for these tasks, but I'm not using it for these. So it's really confusing.
It's interesting. As a professor, you kind of give the problems to the students for them to solve. But as a research consultant, the businesses give you the problems for you to help on. And so what are some, what are some common AI problems that you're seeing, and what are some good ways to mitigate these problems or overcome them for business owners?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, Connor, because one of the other areas that I do a lot of work in is crisis communications, which always is fun because there's always something going on. And so there's actually a couple of things that have come up actually. And one, it was not necessarily a consulting project that I was a part of, but it was something that I have this opportunity that I'm going to be able to do this summer because of AI, surprisingly. And so, what I've seen from a lot of businesses is they just really don't know how it could be used for bad reasons, I think. And so I mean, they have some ideas, but they really don't know kind of the ramifications, and they don't have the planning essentially. And so I think we're kind of seeing like where social media and the web was, 20 years ago. It's like everyone's like, oh, there's this new shiny tool. And I'm like, well, what could go like what could go wrong? What are some things? And so a lot of times been brought in to kind of look at plans, and I always ask the question is, well, do you have a policy, or do you have a protocol, or do you have like a game plan if this happens? And usually I get the deer in the headlights, like, wait, what? I'm like, oh, you need a plan for this. Or if they tie in AI and any components, they do it for their communication plans or their workflows. But then I'm like, well, you have this little thing called crisis communication plans. Do you have that? Or how are you monitoring what is being shared and discussed on you if people are searching for you on Claude or Gemini or chat? And it's just kind of thinking about that balanced perspective. Yeah. Yeah. So I sometimes I feel bad. I'm brought in as a consultant, and then the team kind of looks at me like, okay, you gave us more work. I'm like, no, I'm helping you kind of understand, like, there's a lot of things that could go well that you can do the workflows and plan, but there's also things you need to be aware of. So I'm usually brought in for basically identifying what could go wrong. And I did that for social media, and I've been doing a little bit of that with AI. But the other thing I think too, that's something that I think it's not really, I would say, a crisis, but it's something that we have to be aware of that I've noticed is with the job market, with, talent. I mean, we kind of have this kind of recession, basically with, people are saying, yeah, AI is taking our jobs. We're not being marketed to, but I almost feel like there's a gap of knowledge where people need to look at AI as an opportunity to showcase their knowledge. I mean, everyone's posting on LinkedIn, but with all of these AI tools, they're gathering all of this, data and information, if you're searching for people. And I bring this up because I actually got an inquiry. I wanted to make sure this was first real because I'm like, okay, this seems interesting. And it was. But it was actually from a working group that is associated with the United Nations. And they reached out to me for this opportunity for being part of this global leaders summit in Geneva in July. And so I did this.
Amazing.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I'm celebrating. Everyone clap if you're listening. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was like really honored, but it was like, yeah, it was a global education week, and they actually have an AI for Good summit that they want to be part of. But I remember, I'm always curious with how people, I do my own research, like kind of informally, like kind of like, okay, how did you find out about me? Because it's usually, maybe my books, maybe I wrote something. And one of the guys, it was a panel that interviewed me, and they said, well, we used AI. And I'm like, well, what do you mean you used AI? Like, and he said, well, we are working with a startup company that focuses on talent management for AI, and that based on the combination of databases that they have access to, they have the traditional like database that they work with, for potential leaders in education. But then this ties in, like, oh, who's really coming up? Who's talking about these issues? Who's really getting a lot of interactions and engagement on LinkedIn and all these places? And they said, yeah, your name came up. I'm like, okay, but it got me thinking. I'm like, well, how do you market? Like, that's a talent, issue. Like, how are we teach? I mean, I was thinking, how am I going to teach my students, what they need to be prepared for and work for? How do employees need to kind of think and create thought leadership? Same thing with CEOs. So the talent management component, it's not like a crisis, but it was kind of like, it blew my mind, with how people are using it, and that was something I didn't even think of. So.
And so, you bring up a great point. It's not just search engine optimization anymore. It's answer everywhere optimization. And so, just switching gears, going back to the social media and your expertise there, how are businesses more that the ones that you talk to like this more now, adaptive and curious about being more present and visible on social media because of AI and because of exactly what you said? Not that you aren't and should be well deserving of that opportunity, but they found you through an AI model. So, are you seeing that in a business and operator standpoint?
Yeah, I'm seeing kind of a mixture. It's interesting. Like, I feel that there's definitely a presence online because people want to make sure that people know that, hey, we are here and not like taken over by another account or whatever, because there's been a lot of discussions on which platforms we should and should not be on, or how much time we should spend on each of these platforms. And it's constantly amazing. Like, I feel that LinkedIn right now is having its creator briefcase era. It's like everyone's there, but you do see a lot of people with the AI content and the slop and everything, and everyone's, yeah, the same things over and over again. And you're like, okay, okay, okay. So I think that they want to have a presence, but it's not like the only place they have a presence. And so I think one thing that I have noticed just with the brands that I've kind of worked with is they want to basically have a place where they can have an online community, but they want to drive that online community actually offline. So you're seeing a lot more of these activations coming up, these events, these community meetups. And so you see this around town, even in Louisville, but other places as well. Like, okay, you're part of this community, we're partnering with this brand, we're having a meetup. So you're face to face. So I think, I wouldn't say we're going full analog, but you do see the trend there. But I think people are looking for that authenticity and that realness aspect. So we're kind of seeing this almost blended hybrid model where you're social and connected digitally, but you want to be connected offline too. And so before it's like, oh, I just need to be connected online with this brand and I'm happy. But now it's like, no, I need to kind of at least have something physical or real, like offline, that basically makes that connection together. And I kind of feel like it's almost like having like, those best friend necklaces. It's like having two pieces of the puzzle together. It's like, if you just, I think people were for a long time were happy with just the online component with brands, but now it's like, we need to have this. And so like offline and online together creates the best experience moving forward. And I think that's where people are going.
We touched on common AI problems in business communications earlier. I'd like to get into uncommon solutions. Are there any underreported or underrated uses of AI in businesses communications that you would like to share?
I found that like with using AI, I try to basically, I actually have trained my AI. I've named it Edna Mode.
What is it?
Edna Mode, from The Incredibles, the little, and,
I love that.
I feel sometimes, like we don't push back enough about what is given us, on AI. And I think one utilized tool is basically have it be absolutely not ruthless, but just really keeping us grounded and on our toes. So I've actually used it in a variety of situations with my students to help them prep for crisis press conferences and say, okay, you're going to probably have that one reporter or that one customer or that, really one person that is going to make your life not easy, in terms of handling the crisis. And so you need to kind of create, this basically agent to really test you on whether or not you can actually handle a situation. And so mine, I do this a lot because I do a lot of presentations, and academics can be quite direct, but they can also be very pointed with their feedback. And so I always try to prep to say what type of questions could arise that could be, stump the chump or to try to throw me off. And so I programmed it to be a character that I respect, but also is very frank. And so Edna gives me, it's like, no, that is wrong. Like, what this data is wrong. Like, tell me something else. So for me, it's more of a prep tool to kind of get my mindset right if I'm doing a presentation or I'm doing an interview. So it's been very helpful on that regard and keeping me very grounded. So I wish I had this back when I was a doctoral student in preparation for my dissertation, but better late than ever. So.
Yeah, the example that I always like to give in having to do this, kind of make the AI critique you, is that when GPT 4.0 was out, people criticized it as saying it's just way too sycophantic, and Sam Altman put out a statement saying, yes, it is too sycophantic. The issue there is it didn't say it's sycophantic is the problem. He said it's too sycophantic. So the design of these systems are, it's kind of predisposed to be a little flattering and, yes, you are. That is a great idea kind of thing. And so you do need to sort of push back and customize it to be on that and the mode.
And I think, that's a great point, Connor, because I feel sometimes the students, like what I find is, like I try to provide them with constructive criticism, and Sometimes they are like, well, wait, my work is not 1,000% perfect. Like, what's wrong? Like I got A's everywhere. And so there is that kind of disconnect. And so one way, like what I've done even with the Bird's Nest is, we have to do client feedbacks and client reviews and everything. And so the students are like, wait, I have to do like a review. And so I've tried to talk to them and say, okay, look, like your first round is never going to be perfect. Your last round is going to be, it's like, it's going to have some edits and whatever. So I tell them you have to be comfortable with getting constructive criticism. There's going to be people that will be very, like, hey, you did this well, but hey, we want to do this. There will be people that will tell you exactly what they think, and you need to be aware of how you would respond to that. So because how you respond to one person may or may not go well for you. So it's important to kind of have that understanding, because I personally don't think that is being emphasized or taught, at least in, some classes that I've seen, with my students. But I've tried to, approach it as like a coach. I'm like, I'm here to help you, to help you achieve your goals. Like, I want you to be aware and prepared for these type of conversations, not to be so totally surprised, when it happens. So, but yeah, I think it's so important to have those conversations and be able to get that, opportunity with AI.
We're on, Karen, on the crisis communication side for social media, there's a lot of automations. We talked about workflows and how some, so where, if anywhere, do you coach students that, hey, this is probably when a human should intervene? Is there, I know, because to your point, there's some gray areas, especially in communication. So is there a certain level or a certain point where you believe a human should be intervening?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jenna. And I feel in crisis communications, you should have a human basically monitoring at all levels, because there may be things like you're monitoring in terms of early warning signs that the AI or the tool that you're collecting information from says, oh, this is no big deal. And you're like, that doesn't know the context of this. This is not good. If it's preparing statements, I mean, one thing that I've seen come across, like I know a few months ago, Alex Earl was getting canceled for what she said. She came up with this statement, and it was the first time that everyone I saw in the comments saying, oh, she used ChatGPT to write this statement. And I'm like, okay, they're picking up on what sounds like you in a statement versus what sounds like AI. And so one researcher that I look at, and his name is Tim Coombs, he's brilliant. He's one of the most cited crisis communication researchers. And he basically said, if you're going to have a crisis statement, make it sound like you. If you don't sound like the statement, even though you've gone through this is something too with the lawyers and everything that, all the parties involved, like you still need to make it sound like you. You can't sound like something completely different. Or people will be like, oh, you wrote this about AI. Like, we don't believe you. And so because that's an opportunity where as a human, you need to kind of step in and say, hey, here's what's going on, and be in your voice, be in your presence. So,
yeah, no, that's a great point. So, Karen, thank you so much. As we wrap up, I know you just mentioned offline, you're going on vacation here in a few days, but you're teaching in the fall. I believe the Bird's Nest is open to students, not just here locally, but nationally. So what does the future kind of hold, and how do people get in contact with you if they want to learn more?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I pretty much use the summer as kind of, like opportunities to kind of work on projects. I'm working on a few things right now. I'm working on a new book, and then there's another another edition that I'm going to be doing for my PR book coming up. So I will be busy writing, basically for the summer. And it's kind of ironic, Jenna and Connor, that I'm saying this because when I was a student, I complained about the 5-page papers that I classes. And now I'm like, I'm writing books. So karma is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so I've vacation, and then in the fall I'll be teaching. I'm actually going to be teaching my social media class, and and I teach a graduate level PR and crisis class. So that's fun. And then the Bird's Nest as a nonprofit, we'll be continually working in the fall. Kind of really again helping students empower their skill sets, because some of them are going to be graduating in December, but then some have a few years. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep pretty busy. I'm pretty, much like engaged here locally. I try to, stay connected within the professional community, whether it's PRSA, AAF. But yeah, the ways to keep in contact with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much everywhere on social and email. I'm connected with my phone pretty much. I'm working on my screen time. That is one thing I'm working on this year, and it's I probably have better luck giving up coffee, and that's never going to happen. So I'm embracing, kind of what it is right now. But
Well, listen, no matter if you're interested in talking to Karen from an author perspective, speaking, or classes, we will drop all of her links in the show notes so that you can connect and follow along on her journey. Karen, thank you.
Thanks for coming on Go AI.
Thank you.